This episode of EMS One-Stop is brought to you by Lexipol, the experts in policy, training, wellness support and grants assistance for first responders and government leaders. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's Lexipol.com. Hello and welcome to another edition of EMS One-Stop. I'm your host, Rob Lawrence. And in this edition, we're going back to New Orleans. Why? Because quite simply, they are doing some amazing and great stuff. Last time round, if you go back through the catalogue, you can see we had an amazing chat about the blood program that's going on in New Orleans and their blood medics. And this time we're going to talk about what is an interesting subject and one that seems to be rising in sort of views, opinions, reactions, is body-worn cameras. And New Orleans, as you would expect, are leading the charge and leading the way in the use of body-worn cameras. And with me today, I'd like to bring in Chris Keller, who is the Chief of Operations at New Orleans EMS. Chris, welcome and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate you having me today.
So just give us, I always like to get the sort of backstory from the guests that we have on, Chris. So obviously you are currently Chief of Operations, but where did it all begin for you in EMS and what have you been doing in your career?
Oh, so I started in EMS back in 1993 as an EMT. I worked for a private service in Baton Rouge for a couple of years while I went to paramedic school also. I got my paramedic in 1995. I worked at various services in Louisiana before landing here at New Orleans EMS in 2002, and have been with the city since that time. I came up through being a field paramedic into an operations lieutenant, operations captain. I moved over to the Homeland Security liaison position for a couple of years before I promoted to the current position of deputy chief here.
Wonderful. And so the topic of today's discussion, as I say, is body-worn cameras. We've seen a lot of cases in the last couple of years where our EMTs, our medics have been on the receiving end of notably police body-worn cameras, but also the court of everybody that has a phone is now a photographer and is a reviewer, and it can be posted to any social media platform, etc. And so we're always on camera. And I was listening to a study period not so long ago where we had the defense attorneys actually from the Elijah McClain case who gave some very interesting sort of commentary about the fact that, you know, everyone's filming us, so why aren't we filming us? And so that it's interesting from obviously from both the defense, from a QA/QI perspective, and every other reason you'd think you need to have a camera fitted. So you're doing that, and I want to kind of drill into it. And so just so we know, you are currently using Axon body-worn cameras, the same ones you see on the majority of police departments, etc. But obviously, it's an interesting issue that we go by patient confidentiality. We are all servant to the Lord HIPAA. And of course, moving into having an open filming environment is a big decision to make. So let's go back to the beginning, Chris. What really motivated New Orleans EMS to go down this path?
So we started trialing body cams back in 2018 with the tactical medic team that we have here. We do ATF training every other year. And in this ATF training, it's very intense, it's very stressful. And we wanted to kind of learn what we could do better as the TAC medic team, especially in these stressful or these stress-induced situations while delivering patient care. So that's kind of how it started. We started with the Motorola body cams that would Bluetooth to your microphones. And those are what we used when we were doing our tactical medical training, and we were deployed out on actual tactical missions with the SWAT team and other local law enforcement partners as well. And that's kind of where we started with it. From that point, we looked at moving it into the field. We had about 8 cameras, and we started just trying to field trial them in the field a bit. But at that point in time, in 2018, we were having a little bit of issues with our legal department as far as getting support for that. And not everybody was on board, and there was a whole lot of obstacles that we were having back in 2018. Fast forward a couple of years to 2022 when we started doing blood, and we really wanted to be able to document how successful our pre-hospital blood program is and was at that time. So that was the driving factor to really get cameras onto our blood medics who were take the blood bag with a sprint car, and they're making it out to these critical calls and administering blood in the field. And by having that documented on the body cams, we actually see these patients turning around in the pre-hospital setting And it gave us the ability to really bolster that blood program and get to where we are today.
So as we always say, you've seen one EMS system, you've seen one EMS system. Obviously, you have to convince a lot of people that this is the right idea. This is a good idea. Obviously, you've already mentioned legal. You've mentioned clearly the city. You are a city-based EMS system. How did you sell it in order to get the program underway to all those people that have to say yes?
So it is difficult because I can tell you everyone's concerned about the big brother, that we're going to be in here just watching and looking to ding people. As a matter of fact, in one of our initial presentations that we did to staff in October of 2022, when we were initially pushing out the field trials of the body-worn camera system, I put a slide in there where it showed me and a couple of supervisors sitting in my office with a big bowl of popcorn, watching videos on screen with a big stack of letters of reprimand ready to sign and hand off. And what we did is that's what people thought that was going to happen.
Right.
So I wanted to put in there and just kind of put in just what people's thoughts were and let people know this is not what the body-worn camera program is about. It's about supporting, it's about safety. It's not about trying to go back and find punitive actions to put on staff that when we're Monday morning quarterbacking, because that's not what the program is used for. So I think trying to dispel those myths and rumors initially and keep the body-worn camera being something to seen as positive by the staff, having a slow rollout. It wasn't a 100% one-to-one camera for every employee. We're still not even there at this point. But the slow rollout and maintaining that buy-in was really, really crucial to the success of our program in the early stages and all the way up to where we're at now.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And you'd already mentioned that you had a different make of camera. And so there had to have been some sort of selection process. I mean, how did you arrive at where you are today in terms of the products and the market out there?
Right. So we did field test the Motorola cameras and we field test the Axon cameras as well. The reason New Orleans EMS chose Axon is because NOPD already had a contract in place.
Right.
And with Axon, and they were it was like they were piggybacking on a multi-state contract, and it was an easier flow, easier logistically to go with the Axon program because we had already have systems in place for that. NOPD was familiar with that, and it was an easy platform for our medics to use. We actually field trialed a couple of different Axon systems. They had the Flex 2 cameras, which are the POV cameras, which have the camera that actually mounts onto the glasses.
Yep.
And we had the chest cam. So we were trying just different products from Axon to see which was the best fit. And overwhelmingly, the AB3 platform, which is similar to like the chest mounted camera, was the overwhelming favorite by staff. So that's why we with the Axon. Number one, because the city already had contracts in place for it. And two, from the field trials and testing, they were really comfortable and liked the features that the Axon product had.
Actually, that's probably a whole new broadcast for me around procurement, around pre-bid contracts. And obviously the fact is you don't have to go out to RFP every time you want something new, because either the city in which you work or indeed there are various buyer groups that already have this pre-bid stuff. So that's kind of a general point for anybody that's thinking about going down the body-worn camera route, or indeed any route, that there are actually avenues that you can look at that you don't have to go to a full core RFP as well. So that's good going. Policy, right? So of course you buy the cameras, and of course you have to have the policy to operate the cameras. So what came first, the policy or the cameras? So who drew up your policy, and what's contained within it?
So back in 2018, when we were initially field trialing the Motorola cameras, I had reached out to Cypress Creek EMS, based out of the Houston area, and reached out to their team because they were one of the
and that's Harris County ESD 11 for those,
right. They're ESD 11 now,
in
correct.
new money, right? Yeah.
And I don't even know if they're using cameras anymore. That I'm not sure. But I can tell you that they were very gracious in sharing their policy and their experiences. And their policy became the backbone of our policy. And it was kind of a marriage of what NOPD does for the police officers here, because that's been vetted by the consent decree that we have. And it's vetted by, the Police and Justice Foundation. So we felt very comfortable in being able to use the policies that were kind of in place for NOPD and kind of merging that in with the policies that we received from Cypress Creek. And when I say policies. This policy is a draft in progress. I think it's very important when you have a new program like this that you need to be adaptable, and because you're going to come across challenges that you didn't anticipate. So when it comes to policy, I say, be sure it's a draft, and be sure that you can change it, that you can work with it. I've gone back and forth with legal and made multiple changes. I'm on my 5th revision now of our body-worn cam policy that we put out in March of this year. So again, I think you have to be adaptable and realize that there's going to be challenges that you can't anticipate, and be ready to address those with policy.
And actually, for those listening, I am going to put in the show notes, Paige Wolfberg and Worth, on behalf of NHTSA, did write a sort of guide and direction for the use of body-worn cameras, which is an exceptionally useful document in itself. And also NEMSAC, National EMS Advisory Council Committee, are actually in the process of releasing a body-worn camera directive as well. So all of that on top of the stuff that you're doing, again, very useful notes, etc. So you've gone through the selection process, you've trialed it with a limited number of units, etc. You've worked out your policy. The medics and EMTs on the ground at the sharp end, how did you convince them it was the right thing to do? You mentioned the word Big Brother already, so that elephant's already out in the room. What was the process of convincing the team that this is actually a really good thing to be doing?
I think it was because what we did, it was a slow rollout, which allowed the cameras to be socialized in our first response setting, working on scenes, at the hospital after they would talk about their interpretation of how things went, as people were wearing cameras, and more people trialed them. We started off with a very small, like 15 cameras that we purchased initially. So we were just trying to rotate it through, give everybody kind of a chance to use it and make their own decision as to how they thought it would benefit them. So I think by allowing people to kind of explore, to socialize with them before it became a mandatory thing, so they could kind of learn on their own, was a big part to the success. I didn't want to lose faith in the program from the staff by forcing something down their throat that they didn't want. I wanted to spark interest. I wanted them to really get that firsthand experience for themselves, to see the benefits that it provides them. I know you had mentioned when we were talking a bit earlier that everyone's filming now.
Yep.
And when we go out in the public and we're working in public spaces, 90% of the time you see everybody's got a camera up and you're being filmed. And we have had situations happen where video has been taken out of context and uploaded onto social media without showing the entire story. And we thought it was very important to be able to tell our entire story in a whole. And so taking a snippet out of context to try to paint us in a bad light, we really thought that by having our own footage, if something like that happens again, we can go back and address it and really come to have the backs of our staff out there in the field. We can go back and support them and show that they were making good decisions.
Well, if I have to list the reasons why you should have, as an organization, body-worn cameras, you just give me the perfect soundbite there. Everybody out there is a videographer, and therefore everyone out there is a video editor. And of course, they're going to take the bit that they think looks good in order to get them, whether it's clicks or views or, just to make some sort of mischief even. And
Right.
therefore to have our own.
It's all about sensationalizing, what they can. But again, when we have the whole story to tell everything in context,
Yeah.
It certainly balances out any type of sensationalized tidbit.
Indeed. Everybody is watching us now. So we're going to stop for a second and just have a quick break and a word from our sponsor.
Lexipol empowers first responders and public servants to best meet the needs of their residents safely and responsibly. Serving more than 2 million public safety and government professionals in over 8,000 agencies and municipalities, Lexipol offers a range of solutions that includes policies, training, behavioral health resources, news and analysis, and grant assistance services for law enforcement, fire and rescue, EMS, local government, and other agencies dedicated to public safety. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's LEXIPOL.com.
And we're back. And that was the voice of Jim Dudley. He's not only my voiceover artist, but also the host and presenter of Policing Matters over on Police One. And this discussion today is almost one of those crossover police EMS podcasts, of course, because our colleagues in the police have been using body-worn cameras for a long time. And so I'm sure we can put some links in the show notes to where Jim has had the police body-worn camera sort of version of this discussion. But obviously we are now playing catch-up as a profession. You've heard so far from Chris Keller that this is a really good thing. But before we go back to Chris, please make sure that you like and subscribe on the platform that you get your podcast or your vodcast from. Don't forget that not only are we on all of the podcast audio platforms, but we also go out on YouTube. So not only can you hear us, you can also see us. And as I say every time, there are lots of extra slides, graphs, charts, photos, images, videos, so you can watch along on some of the things that we're talking about. So, but anyway, like, subscribe, and follow. We're talking to Chris Keller, Deputy Chief of Operations at New Orleans EMS. Chris, great first half. Where I want to come back into, though, is, so we've talked about all the policy, we've talked about the setup, but let's talk about the anatomy of a call here. So we get a call for service. The crew are on their way. They're wearing what we've seen now is the body-worn camera, not the one on your glasses. So what happens when they arrive on scene? Does the camera activate automatically? Take me from the sort of soup to nuts of a call.
So when they arrive on scene, typically we have a Samsara fleet cam system. So that way we really don't need to be recording body cams on the way to the call for service. So when they arrive to the call for service, we have to activate the body cam by hitting a double tap on the big round button in the middle. And when you double tap the big round button, that starts the event. What it does also capture, it captures 30 seconds of video buffered before you hit the button. So there's no audio on that, but it will allow, if we're late to an event, or say something happens and you're reacting, if you hit that, you're going to capture 30 seconds of video before you actually activate the button. So that allows us to capture anything on the front end that we might miss where we need to really capture an event like that. So anyway, they make their scene, they get their equipment, they go to the patient, they make contact. They're going to let the patient know that, hi, I'm Chris, I'm a paramedic with New Orleans EMS, this is body-worn camera. You're being recorded for your safety and my safety. And then they will go ahead and run the call for service. Now, if there's any pushback from the patient, and again, if they're in a private setting in their own home and they wish not to be filmed, then at that point in time, we'll pause the recording and put the camera back in a standby mode. If we're in a public space, it's all fair game in public space. If you're in public, basically you have your consent to be recorded, again, because Louisiana is a one-party consent state. So we encourage our medics to keep recording as long as possible, and until it becomes either A, a barrier to patient care, B, maybe a safety issue, or C, again, if it's actual private property, we want to be respectful of that individual's wishes. Also, if someone's like in a sensitive situation and like maybe a partial state of undress, or maybe it was some type of sexual assault call, we want to be sensitive to those needs, and we don't want to re-victimize the patient again at that point. So again, we built out medic discretion in our policy to be able to turn the cameras off in those situations where it could feel like it's a barrier to patient care, if it's an invasion of someone's privacy, or say if you go into a locker room where you're going to have multiple people in various states of dress or undress. We don't want to put anybody or film anybody in a situation like that. So again, we built out that discretionary part in the policy to allow the medics to be able to make that determination of when it's appropriate and not appropriate to be filming.
Excellent. So we've done the call. We've got the patient's footage there. But what happens when we now start transporting, we get to hospital? Is it on all the way through?
So we do film the entire transport, and we film all the way until we're crossing the threshold at the emergency department of the hospital. And as I mentioned before, it wasn't a battle that I was really looking to have with the hospital by bringing cameras into the hospital. So at this point in time, we have pretty seamless transitions as far as transfer of care from medics to nurses. If that becomes a problem in the future, then we can revisit this policy and maybe extend it all the way through patient handoff. The other thing is, each call for service is anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes upwards to an hour, just depending on how long you spend on scene, how long your transport time is. So by stopping at the threshold to the hospital, that also allows a little bit of battery preservation and a little bit less data that's captured that may not be utilized. Because oftentimes when we get to the hospitals, we're going to be parked on the wall for 20, 30 minutes, even longer. And that's going to, of course, eat up battery time. It's going to also acquire more data. And then you're looking at data storage fees and retention and things like that. So in the bigger picture, it didn't really make sense to do it at this point in time. So basically from start of the call until either refusal or AMA is captured from the patient, or that threshold to the emergency department is crossed, that's the entire scope of what we're filming.
Excellent. And you've just helped me segue nicely into where I want to go next, because we talked about the policy, the development, the operation, and now we've got the call done. It's in the can, so to speak. We've got a lot of video there. Where does it stream to? Where does it go to? Part one, and then who's reviewing it? And can even the crew come back and look at it from a contemporaneous record, charting perspective?
So at the end of the shift, the medics put their camera into a docking charger bay, and what that does, it not only charges the camera, but it also uploads all the video onto the evidence.com server, which is the Axon server where all of the videos are held. The Axon server is HIPAA compliant. It has multi-factor authentication. It has an audit trail for anyone who accesses any videos at any point in time once it's been uploaded to the server. So it gives us everything that we need to be HIPAA compliant as far as data retention with the evidence.com server. If the medic does choose to look at the call, Axon does have an app, the View app on their phone, if they would choose to download on their phone. Some people a little bit leery about putting city or work-related things on their phone. We have the tough books that they can use, the Axon View XL. And again, they can go back and view that call for service. Maybe you have an FTO working with the new hire, and they want to go back and look at the new hire's performance in the call. There's no debating on what happened when you go back and look at something on video. You may think you did something on a call, but the video may show to the contrary. And it can be used for training right there at that point in time. Immediately at the end of the call, they can go back and review. It's also helpful if they weren't sure what time they did a procedure, or if something was missed or whatever, they can go back and review to see exactly what happened, what time a procedure was performed, or maybe what's some procedures or things that could be done better to improve the crew management on the scene.
So it can take a lot of people, because you're recording real life. It is a reality show going on your chest, recording the patients. So what calls are you automatically reviewing? And then from that, what are you doing with that information?
So I would say 99.9% of the calls that we get, they go onto the evidence.com server. They live there for 425 days, and then they go away. We're probably viewing less than 1%, or less than, somewhere far below 1% is what we're reviewing in actual footage that we do have. The triggers for review, number one could be a medic wanting to go back and review their call for service with the QA/QI team. Maybe they had a challenging call and they weren't really sure if they managed it appropriately, or if there were some things that they could have done better for the outcome. So you could have a medic having a request to review their own footage with the QA/QI team. You can also have, like if we have any type of use of force or an assault that occurs, we'll pull that video and earmark it, and we'll pull it away so that it will not be deleted after 425 days. So we can use that for the prosecution of anyone who would, attempt to commit assault or battery on any of our staff. Also, the high acuity, low occurrence events, the halo events, if we're doing just something that we're not doing very often, like we have advanced practice paramedics now that are signed off on doing cricothyrotomies. We'll be doing, thoracostomy soon. There's a lot of different things that we'll be doing. We're using the ultrasound in the field. So, and blood, pre-hospital blood. So all of these things can be reviewed, these halo events, to see how our crew management is going on scene, making sure that they're all acting as good team members with each other, being professional, courteous, and also showing compassion and empathy to our patients in the field. It's not just all about medicine. It's also about, your attitude and the way that you treat people. And I can tell you again, when you have a camera on your chest that's watching what you're doing, and it's kind of in the back of your mind that, this is being recorded, and I'm more likely to make a better decision or act a little bit more professional than I would be otherwise.
Well, of course, it's a lesson to everybody right now that whether you've got body-worn cameras or not, you're being recorded. And Doug Wolfberg used a phrase that we are now, in delivering performative operations. In other words, we are performing for the public that is watching us, as well as delivering care to the patient. So that's something, a huge takeaway, body-worn cameras or not. One of the questions that I asked you before we started recording, I'm going to ask you again, of course, is I know that Axon has the ability for you to view remotely, and what's the policy, and when would you actually log in to see what's going on scene or elsewhere even?
So we did use this in Mardi Gras of 2023. We had a multi patient shooting along the parade route. We had, I believe, like 7 patients shot over a 5 or 6 block area. I was working in our emergency operations center here at headquarters, and I was able to tap into each one of the cameras of the responding units to kind of see exactly what they had, where they were at, because we had bike teams responding, we had sprint cars responding, we had ASAPs responding, we had ambulances responding, but the ASAPs and the bike teams don't have any way to transport those patients. So what we were trying to do is utilize the body-worn camera to see what they had, get their exact location, to get the transport resources to get that specific patient that they were caring for off the scene in a expedient fashion. So it's very helpful from a commands perspective to be able to log in, see where your assets are at any given time. And also, if you need to, we can tap into any recording event that's in progress. Now, we don't have the ability to activate someone's camera to see what's going on with them. We can only tap into a feed that the medic has already activated their camera for. That was helpful also. I'll give another quick example. We had a bike team during Mardi Gras that was working in the French Quarter. There was a whole lot of traffic on the radio. We knew that they were sent to a man down. We thought we heard something that they said they could have been working code, but we weren't really sure. So we were able to tap in to see what their camera were. And once we saw that they were working a cardiac arrest on Bourbon Street, we were able to send the ambulance, the fire department, and all the additional resources to help them, because in crowds like that, they're not hearing their radio. They may not be able to transmit out. But by having that live stream to see exactly what's going on in front of the crew right there, we were able to really guide those resources in there to get that patient cared for and transported off the scene in a timely fashion.
Excellent. And those are great examples. And again, great use case studies. So thank you for telling us about that. And so there are clearly a lot of things that any organization has to think about going forward. And if you're listening or watching this, of course, if you have any questions for our good friends at New Orleans, just drop us a note, leave a comment in the chat of the various platforms, and of course we can direct them over to New Orleans. So looking forward then, the future, what is the future for body-worn cameras? Clearly they're here to stay. This isn't just a pilot, you're doing it, right? And so what's next?
So here at New Orleans EMS, we're at 50 cameras now, basically 49, 50 cameras. My goal is to get 1 camera to every 1 medic that we have employed at New Orleans EMS. That's going to take about 120, 130 cameras to get us to 1-to-1 compliance, or 1-to-1 camera ratio to employed. That's where I want to be. Right now, where we're at is it's mandatory for all of our operations captains, our operations lieutenants, our field training officers, and our preceptors. So anyone who's of rank as captain, lieutenant, FT, or preceptor is mandated to wear a body-worn camera on every call for service. And again, that allows to help remediate any issues that are found in the training process, and also to help remediate the way we train people and everything too. So there's a lot to be learned when you go back and are able to look at these calls where we may be having problems on, to be able to really focus in on what those problem areas are and how we can do better in the future. I think this is only going to improve, and we're going to continue to keep growing this program. I think, honestly, I believe this will be the industry standard at EMS within the next 5 to 10 years. I do believe it will be. I think this technology is is too great not to leverage to our benefit at this point in time. And we were just happy to get on board early in this process. We've had good partners along the way, with other agencies reaching out with their experiences, and trudging through and finding our own path as well. But again, it's been a benefit. I think the slow rollout definitely helps. The socializing with the staff definitely helps, but maintaining that buy-in through the course from the very initial beginning to where we're at now, maintaining that buy-in is essential to the success of a body worn cam program.
So you had to go there, right? So let's use the F word, funding, all right? Because clearly you're not where you need to be. You need to purchase more units. There are clearly lots of grants out there, whether it's Assistance to Firefighter grant, whether it's any kind of federal grant funding. How are you paying for it?
So this comes out of our capital budget. We pay. I think we did maybe have a little bit of ARPA funds. I'm not sure if we used ARPA on any of the purchases or not. Procurement is not really my area of responsibility. And being in municipal government, there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy that you got to get through, a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. So just keep in mind, if you're a public agency and you're looking to make purchases on these, understand it's going to take a while. You're going to have to get waivers. You're going to have to look through all of your sources and vendors. So just make sure that you're giving yourself time, on the front end. Again, do your research, find a vendor that works for you as far as like Axon or Motorola or others. There's a lot out there. Do your research and find the ones that work best and who can really give you the product and the support that you need. Because not only are you buying cameras, you're also buying the licensing, you're buying the chargers, you're buying the updates for the software. There's a lot that goes with it. So just understand it's more than just buying a camera and plug it in and going. There's a lot of work that has to be done, not only on the procurement side, but again, also on the legal side, and how it's going to be stored, and, the compliance with HIPAA. There's a lot to consider, but I really want to be a resource to anyone who's looking to expand to a body-worn camera program, with their service. I've had a lot of talks with other services after EMS Expo, and even before that. And I want to continue to be, someone who can provide some guidance to anyone who may be looking to have some questions answered.
Excellent. Thank you. And with this podcast, of course, we're here to spread the word as well, and to encourage people to, if they want to go down this path, this is where they get the resources from. By the time we go to publish this podcast, wherever, in the show notes, I will, as I've said, put in the PWW NHTSA guidance on body-worn camera usage. And actually, they talk about the 1 and 2 consent state rules there. So that's in there. I'll also speak to our colleagues at EMS One and indeed Police One, because I think there are how to buy guides for body-worn cameras. So again, I'll put those in the show notes. Again, that's a resource that you can use, and I'll find some information about grant funding as well. So we'll, again, try to be a one-stop. That's why we call it the one-stop, right? So a one-stop resource for everybody on this particular subject. So
look forward to seeing that document too. You said it was a PWW?
Yeah, I will stick it in the notes and send it over straight away.
I look forward to seeing it.
It's, again, a very useful resource. And however, for my mental checklist, Chris, you are following everything that they said you should be doing. So 10 out of 10 for that one. So my final question with every interview I do, Chris, is there anything I've forgotten to ask or anything else you need to tell us?
I think one part of it was just being able to classify how the body-worn camera footage would be used, because we don't use it for diagnostic purposes or anything like that. With HIPAA and EPCR, you got to sit on that for 7 years. And if we had to sit on 7 years worth of recordings, we're talking about the costs really add up with the data storage and data retention. So we were able to classify the medical or the body-worn camera footage as not being part of the medical record. And that allows us to put our own timeline on how long we wanted to keep the footage. And we decided on 425 days. Number one, because the statute of limitations is 365 days. So if someone wants to come in and file a suit on New Orleans EMS, there's a good chance that we're going to have the footage to go back in and investigate and possibly be able to disprove any allegations at that point in time. But also that extra 30 days or extra 60 days that to 425 days gives us that built-in time. So that way it's not being deleted on the 366th day. It gives us 60 days of space just in case we got to go back and pull anything from our evidence.com library to earmark that to prevent it from being deleted. So I think we reached out to our Louisiana Department of Health and the staff attorneys there, and they said they were able to classify this as not being a part of the medical record. And that allowed us to make the determination on how long we keep this footage for. So working closely with your state health departments, with your legal teams, and again, with any other resources that you need, it's very important to keep all that in mind. And being
well, you've just added to the whole checklist of things we need to go through. And of course, yes, get your look at what the conditions are in your state and your state office of EMS or whatever that organization is called is also key. So, Chris, thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive trip around your journey with body-worn cameras, the pros. I didn't hear too many cons, and I think it is the shape of things to come. So, again, thank you for trailblazing in New Orleans, and that's why I keep coming back to you guys, because you're really doing some cool stuff. So thank you again for doing what you're doing.
Thank you for inviting me to be on your show this morning, and I'm very grateful for your time and for the interest in the body-worn cams. Again, I do believe this will be an industry standard at some point in the near future, and we're happy to set these blaze these trails. And again, we're happy to be a resource for anyone else who's looking to learn from our mistakes in our program. I'm happy to share our experiences.
So there we have it, the industry standard trailblazing New Orleans EMS, only here on the EMS One-Stop. As I've said, all of the things we'll talk about, I will put in the show notes so you have a one-stop reference point for all of that information. I'd like to thank Chris Keller. I'd like to thank Alexis, who's the PIO at New Orleans, who's behind the scenes organizing my chats with the great team down there. So thank you also to, she's the unsung hero of all the broadcasts that we're doing with New Orleans. But for the moment, Chris Keller, thank you very much indeed. Don't forget, as I've said before, all of the links are in the show notes. Please make sure that you like and subscribe on the platform that you take your podcast or your podcast from. If you're listening to us, go over onto YouTube, EMS1 YouTube channel, because we're on camera and there's other things you can look at as well during the podcast. So that's been another edition of EMS One-Stop. Thank you to my guest, Chris Keller. I've been Rob Lawrence. And until next time, bye for now.